Good afternoon. Just wanted to speak to you about the recruitment you've done in part. Obviously, people are very impressed by the business you've managed to do, excuse me, as a club, particularly so I think the signings that you've obviously earmarked. How important was it for you that you got a say in who came in? Because it isn't always the case that the manager dictates transfers.
Yeah, look, obviously, for me, it was kind of essential. And I think, to be fair to the club, I think they understood that when they appointed me because, just, I guess, with my history and the way I want my teams to play, it's really important that, we bring in players who are going to suit the system. It's not just about signing sort of, talented players or, players we may think have potential. It's whether they can fit into the way, I want the team to play. And obviously no one knows that better than me. So, having that sort of control and being able to sort of make sure that the characteristics we're looking for, both from a point of view of the player and also, the person that we're trying to sign, has been vital. And I've said before, I think that's, I've done that my whole career, and for the most part, I've had success in players I bring in because I kind of, I know what I'm looking for.
You need players who suit the system. You also need players who are equipped to then play the way you want to play. I think you spoke before about the need to get them up to a level to play exactly how you want to do that. How long do you think it is before they can reach those levels? Does it take a pre-season or a couple of pre-seasons to get them to how you want to play ideally?
It depends on the player. Sometimes it's just, with all players, it kind of, there's not a sort of one-size-fits-all model. The penny drops with some of them at different times. Some come in straight away and feel really comfortable in the setup. Others just take a little bit longer. I think the key part of that is that, trying to sign players who embrace the fact that they're going to be learning maybe something new and playing a little bit differently to maybe what they're used to. But as long as they've got the characteristics that I'm looking for, then if they're coachable, then it usually happens pretty quickly. But, some take a little bit longer. Sometimes it's the physical side of the game that it takes longer to adapt to. So there's no sort of set formula. And, we've been pretty fortunate this year that most of the guys have, because we've had to throw them in, whether they're ready or not, or whether we're comfortable that they've understood what we want them to do or not. And they've adapted really, really quickly, which is a credit to them.
And are you expecting new signings in before the transfer window closes?
No, I wouldn't be expecting anyone else in.
In terms of players going out, could there be some departures from the club?
Yeah, possibly. As I said, we're still working on trying to get some loan opportunities for some of our boys. So, I'd expect there will be some sort of activity between now and the end of the window. Could even go beyond the window. There are certain markets around the world that don't close at that time. So, there might be guys who we're still trying to get opportunities for.
In terms of the squad for the game, did the players come through unscathed against Hearts?
Yeah, nothing major. Obviously a bit of fatigue in a couple of them because they haven't played a lot recently. But aside from that, no injuries and no one's come through with anything that's going to sort of affect them in terms of team selection for tomorrow.
Ange, is there any update on the injury, the length of injuries to Callum McGregor, to Yusuke, to Kyogo or David? Any updates in terms when we might expect them back?
No, not really. As I've said with all of them, different sort of timescales, different sort of rehabs they're in, but nothing definite. They're all sort of working away in the background, and some of them are obviously a bit longer term than others. But from my perspective, we'll just look at the players who are available.
Sorry, and just to be clear as well, going back to transfers, you do expect one or two, maybe more, to leave on loan. Would that mean if you have a few going out that you would bring any in, or are you happy with everyone that you've got in, even with a few going out the door?
I thought I was pretty clear.
So no more business at all, even if a few go out the door then?
I thought I was pretty clear.
Okay, thank you.
And Joe McKenna from the Homeboys podcast here. Just want to ask you a question. it's evident to us, the supporters, that there's a bonding and a unity that's developed among the players. You yourself have mentioned about building an environment that is good for the players and therefore good for the team. My question is, when you approach the idea of building that environment, is it something you approach with a methodology, or is it just inherent to the way you approach working with players, or is it personnel driven?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in people. There's culture and environment are sort of buzzwords around the world, and they're obviously very important. But I've always had this strong belief that that's driven by people. So my view is you get the right kind of people in with values that align, then you create a good team environment, a good bond, and that doesn't mean that sort of everyone's the same, because people are all individuals, but there's some underlying stuff, like I said, in terms of their values, in terms of their motivations, in terms of the kind of people they are, that if you get the right kind of people, that's not just with players, staff as well, then the kind of environment drives itself, and I don't have to, I certainly don't go around making up rules and regulations about what people can and can't do. I've never believed in that. I've never believed in, a fine system or telling people what's right or wrong. I often said to the guys that, I think we all grow up with a basic essence of what is right and wrong, and that's all I expect. I expect people to behave like good human beings, and within that, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to they're going to stuff up at times. They might be late for a meeting, or they might get something wrong. That's just human nature. My thing is just be a decent person. Have respect for your surroundings, respect for your teammates, the people you work alongside, and the rest is driven by itself. And within that, like I said, you pick the right leaders, and we've certainly got that, particularly with Callum driving it in the dressing room and some other experienced players. But for me, the whole methodology centres around the right kind of people, and the right kind of people that suit sort of the environment I want to set, and that's where I sort of base everything I do on.
Ange, I'll ask about 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙚, obviously a player that I think, if you were to look at his time at Celtic, rather frustrated in terms of injuries and whatnot. Obviously, in your time here, you've brought on a lot of forwards. Is he one of those players that if he wants the game time he thinks he needs, he may be one that in the next couple of days may have to move on?
Again, I'd rather not talk about the players individually, but if there are players, as I've said all along, if there are players who feel like they'll get more opportunities elsewhere, then, we'll help facilitate that. And so, at the moment, Albie's just, coming back from his injury, and he's almost back with the group now. So, hopefully he's back up and running and fit. But, as I said, with all the guys who are not getting regular game time. Some of them, the younger ones, obviously we want to actively try and find them some game time somewhere, because it's important for their development. Some of the ones, the more senior ones who aren't playing, it really comes down to them if they feel there's better opportunities somewhere else.
Can I also just ask your impressions of the window? Obviously, it's been 2 transfer windows now. In terms of your managerial career, in terms of the overhaul you did to the squad, has it probably been the most hectic time in terms of transfer windows you've been involved in, or where does this sort of rank in your career of that sheer scale of the chain?
Yeah, it's up there. It's up there. I'd have to look back historically, but most of the clubs I've worked at, by the end of year 2, there's been a fairly significant turnaround in personnel. But when you're talking 6 months into it, I think we've done 16 or 17 transfers. I think that's that's probably the high watermark for me. I guess there's obviously an element of risk whenever you do business, because it's not a precise science. We've seen many clubs around the world spend a hell of a lot of money and not get it right. So I'm pleased as a club that we've seemed to be in a good place, considering the amount of sort of changes we've had to make.
And just going back to, you were discussing the team spirit amongst the squad. How much does results like Hearts during the week, coming through a game like that at a place like Tynecastle, help to bond these guys? As you say, there's been a big turnover of players, but coming through a night like that, it must just bring everyone together.
Yeah, it helps with the bond, but it also helps with belief as well, that you're kind of understand the challenges when you're going into the game, and that's the one thing, you know, I consistently, you know, sort of praise the guys on, is that they've just been a really resilient group of people, you know, players and staff, that we've had some enormous challenges right from the first game, and along the way, even when things weren't going well in terms of the results early on, we weren't making excuses, we weren't asking for time, we weren't saying, you know, it's going to take a little bit for people to settle. We just rolled our sleeves up and got on with it, and you know, the result of that is that, you know, like you said, going to Tynecastle, a difficult place against a team that's going well, and getting a victory when, you know, we've obviously had some challenges on the day when we're giving guys a debut or playing 1 or 2 games before. It just further fuels that belief they have in what we're doing, and you know, then that in turn creates that bond. But I think it's something that sort of self-fulfills itself once you buy into something, that, you know, you don't let whatever potential impediment that's in your way stop you from what you want to achieve.
How do you approach the team selection for tomorrow, Ange? Obviously, a big game coming up with Rangers on the horizon, but the 3 points against Dundee United is every bit as important. Yeah,
well, I mean, yeah, you're spot on. I mean, every game's important. So, you know, there's no point trying to think of what you're going to do in, you know, a game's time or 2 games' time or 3 games' time if you don't accomplish what you want with what's in front of you. And again, that's something we've been really good at, just focusing on what's in front of us. So, you know, tomorrow's team will be the team we think will get the job done. And you know, Dundee United came here and, you know, it's frustrated us last time, so we know it's going to be a challenge. So, you know, we've got to be up for it. So I'll select a team that I think will get the job done tomorrow. We obviously still have some limitations in terms of options with the amount of absences we've got at the moment, but, you know, I'm confident the 11 that will start will be best equipped to get the job done.
And you mentioned Callum McGregor already and his leadership skills that are so important. We saw him in the stand at Tynecastle despite that injury. Is that testament to Callum's character and how seriously he takes his role as captain, that he still wants to be there and contribute however he can?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, he's totally invested in this, you know, and, you know, he knows how important he is as a person to this group, not just as a footballer. So, you know, whilst the football side of things takes a back seat for the time being, he still knows that he's an influence around the group. And, you know, he was in and around the dressing room before the game, after the game. And, you know, I think all the lads were pleased to see him alongside them. But, you know, again, that goes back, I guess, to the spirit we've got in the bond within the group, that, you know, they all want the team to do well, whether they're playing or not. They all want success for each other, and you know, they enjoy the success that everyone has, whether it's, you know, they're involved individually or not.
Another player I wanted to ask you about was 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙘𝙤𝙤, who's been out since the summer. I just wondered, is he back in training? And if so, is he a player that might feature for you in the coming weeks?
Yeah, not back. He's had he's had a couple of little setbacks. So we're thinking maybe next week he'll start training with the group, and then, you know, obviously he's another one that's had sort of a lot of injuries and disruptions in the first sort of half of the year. So we'll just give him a chance to get himself fit and train with the group. And in terms of opportunities, we'll see what develops from there.
Ange, can I ask you about, you've got a couple of players on international duty just now, Rogic and Maida, and both of them featuring for their countries in the last few days. Is there I know you want them to do well. Is there a sense of trepidation when just hoping that they do well but come back ready for the second half of the season?
More than trepidation. What's beyond trepidation? Yeah, I don't enjoy watching him. I don't enjoy watching him as much as, you know, as you said, I want them to do well, and Tommy did really well. And obviously, you know, playing for Australia, I want Australia to win. So, but I'm not displeased when, you know, Tommy sort of got taken off and he jogged off nice and healthy, or, you know, seeing 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙘𝙤 on the bench didn't sort of dampen my spirits too much. Like I said, I want them to do well, but as you said, we've already had a bit of bad luck with international duty so far this year, so you kind of, you know, you want the guys to do well, but yeah, there's always a little bit of a trepidation, as you say, when watching them play.
And to Dundee United, they obviously got a very late winner in their game midweek, and you expect them to be probably buoyed by that. Are you expecting a confident Dundee United tomorrow?
Certainly, yeah, it'll be a challenge for us for sure. Their form before that wasn't great, so we all know what it's like when you're going through a bad spell. You just need a good result, irrespective of how you get it, to raise morale and turn things around, and they got that in the last game. So, but irrespective, I think even if they didn't win the other night, we know what to expect. It's going to be a tough game. As I said, they came to Celtic Park previously and frustrated us. So we're under no illusions that it's going to be another good challenge for us.
Ange, first and foremost, you come across as a very, very modest guy, but from somebody who is a very passionate supporter, I just wanted to firstly thank you for what you've brought to the club, and 17 new signings, the lion's share of which are featuring now in the first team, and rightly so. And you look back at Celtic signings in the last few years, that hasn't been the case. We've brought in signings who haven't featured. So I think we've almost got to the point with 10 of your signings plus the captain in our first 11, and I can't wait for us to be lucky enough to get to a point where everybody's fit and we can see the real fruits of your labour. But 20 goals since our last defeat, that Livingston away game, feels like a long time ago now, and it's crystal clear that there's a bond between the fans, the players and the manager. And standing in the Celtic end the other night, just felt before the game super confident, despite missing probably 3 of our top 5 players. I felt confident going into that game, and the atmosphere in the crowd was sensational. And then to watch the players on the pitch and their desire, their urgency, their pressing, their work ethic is just sensational. The best I've seen for a long time. I just wondered, from your perspective, you can see it all coming together now and coming to fruition. And as I say, that the results speak for themselves with 17 wins and 3 draws. What's next? What would you like to see the team do more of, or what do you think missing that you would like to see?
Yeah, look, appreciate the kind words, and you're right to point out that it's been a collective effort, and the fans have been a big part of that, because I just, maybe I'm in I was in many ways in a fortunate position where, after the fans, couldn't support their team last year, and we know how important they are to this football club. I was lucky enough to tap into that enthusiasm when they were allowed back into the grounds from the beginning of the year, and I think the players have really enjoyed the energy between the supporters and themselves, both home and away, because, obviously we'd struggled away from home even last year, and when we got that first victory away, you could sense that the players saw what it meant to the supporters, and I think that energy's sort of filtering both ways. In terms of what's ahead, there's still plenty ahead. I mean, there's so much more development we need to do with this group of players and this team, because when you make so many changes, it's impossible to sort of get the progress you want, because you're constantly, almost in a rebuilding phase. From my perspective, I know there's, and if you look at kind of my history, without, again, sort of repeating things that have been said quite often, it takes a little bit of time for my methods to kick in and for the team to play the way I want, to gain the ultimate success. I knew here that, I wasn't going to be afforded the time that I've had maybe at other clubs, so I knew we had to sort of hit the ground running as much as possible. But, I still think the best of this team will come in the coming years, hopefully, and that's certainly my intent for as long as I'm here, that whatever we produce, the goal is to be better, more exciting. We want everyone talking about how we play our football, not just our supporters to be sort of proud of that, but everyone in the football world to kind of be looking at us and saying, they're playing some special football. So that's still down the line, and that's still ultimately my goal, alongside having success, is produce a football team that hopefully everyone talks about.
Fantastic. And you brought in a lot of players from far afield. Remember reading Stylian Petrov's book, and he talked about what a really daunting experience what it was for him, because he's a young Bulgarian player who hadn't travelled anywhere out with his own country, and he talked about desperate wanting to go home for a long time after signing. Just curious as to how the guys are settling in. I think about, Abada, for example, and then the lads coming in from Japan. Again, as a supporter watching them on the pitch, they look like they're absolutely loving it. And as much as we see ourselves as a big club, and how couldn't you enjoy it? It's a different culture, isn't it? And for some of them, it's the first attempt at playing at another club. I'm just curious as to how do you think they're settling in?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's not just the ones who come from far afield. I mean, you just talk to say, a Matt O'Reilly who's just come from down the road, and even he will tell you the experience he had the other night was something he's never experienced before. And yeah, that's our job as a club as well. And the club's really good, particularly since the start of the year, in understanding that we need to support these guys on and off the field. We've employed two more people to look after guys and sort of make sure they get settled in, particularly the new players, whether they come from abroad or they come from, like I said, even from local areas, because I just think it's a big part of allowing players then to focus on what's really important for them. If we can sort of give them that support off the field, and it's an area we will still continue to do, because we take the responsibility when we bring a young player. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the talent they have, and we spend a fair bit of money sometimes bringing them over, and the worst thing you can do then is just sort of dump them in here and expect them to sink or swim. You've got to give them the best chance to have success. So, as I said, the club's put some infrastructure in place off the field to help these guys settle, and we'll continue to sort of improve those areas, because I think the welfare of our players is paramount to giving them the best opportunity to succeed. It's like anything else, we at least then we give ourselves no excuses for things not working out, because from my perspective as a football club, that's our role, to provide the best possible environment for these players to fulfil their dreams and also achieve success at this football club.